Good morning. I'm sitting here daydreaming, and I wonder if daydreaming is something that is beat out of children or discouraged. Let me say discouraged. Children get discouraged from daydreaming. But I'm sitting here daydreaming, and something crossed my mind. It's interesting. The brain is a thing will happen and it'll trigger something from a long time ago, at least with me, which is why I wrote a short story. I was working on a short story back in the early 2000s about libraries not existing anymore in this dystopian world. The only libraries, only books that the world had was like older people. And so you went to the library, which was this place where older people just sat around, and you can go and talk to them on a certain subject, or you can talk to them about oral history, like fiction, or you can talk about science, because these people had the knowledge of a particular subject. Anyway, that was a short story idea that I had, and I was working on it. It's interesting how I was sitting here getting ready to work on some grants and some other stuff, and it dawned on me, because I was starting to daydream, that back when AIDS happened, that pandemic, that epidemic, that plague, I was young. And when I say young, I mean 20, 21. I remember going to places, and this is the thing that's funny about the brain. I can't remember where I went, but I know there was a group of people that we made kits, Goodwill kits, or I guess we would call it self-care kits now. We did kits and packed food and went around and gave food to people who were suffering with AIDS and maybe couldn't get out of their house, or maybe was like bedridden, and we would go around and do these kinds of things. I just started thinking about it, and the things that are happening now. I did a conversation on Instagram with Kat Black, and it's not the first time that I've heard someone on the trans spectrum that talked about not being able to cross certain borders. And by borders, come from here to Texas or vice versa, because of the things happening in America right now. And it's really disheartening. It's poor us. What happens to one affects all of us. I started thinking about how disheartening that could be, and how people won't be able to get medication. Not even just their hormone medication, but regular medication. If you have a heart disease, if you have blood pressure, certain things are going to be very expensive, but also it's magnified to a degree when it comes to our trans sisters, brothers, and our siblings, right? I'm tying this together. So I was sitting here daydreaming that I wish I could figure out a way, maybe asking for help from the community, to figure out a way how we can come together and pull our resources together so that if someone does need help. When I was thinking about this thing I was doing when I was 20, this was like in someone's house. They had all of this stuff, and we just all came over and started doing stuff, right? And this is before the internet, so I can't even imagine how I figured this out or found out. It must have been like word of mouth. Someone must have said something. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And then I brought some friends, and then we all just went over. But I really am contemplating and really trying to figure out how, in this day and age, with the internet, we can come together and pull our resources and have things on the ready for people who may need it. I'm sure that if we could do it without the internet, we certainly can do it with the internet. I'm just balling and trying to figure some shit out. I really didn't start really thinking about it. It just came to me, and then I pressed the button, and I'm just talking about it. I guess at the time, not that this word has changed, but I guess at the time, what we were doing back in the 80s was mutual aid, right? Mutual aid still exists. You can give to organizations that have a mutual aid kind of a thing. I'm using the parallel of the 80s because our community had to take care of ourselves, because the government wasn't doing it, and they were denying it. It's a whole thing. You have the internet, find out. Just type in Reagan in the 80s or Reagan and AIDS. Anyway, I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts on how we can band together or have any resources. I do have a doc of resources, but that's like civics, like who to vote out of office, which will be another video. But I'm talking about how do we get medicine or supplies to our community to help take care of our community. It's something I'm going to continue to think about. And sometimes when you apply for grants, you can't, grants have such restrictions, and grants aren't a guarantee. So money, that's not money that's guaranteed. It's not like I'm going to get the grant and be like, yes, I got the grant. Like I work for hours on end doing grants, and you may not get a grant. So I'm not really relying on that. But I wonder if there is some way we can think together, come together, and maybe do some mutual aid for folks in our community in a growth kind of way where it can be sustainable, because we are a community that is already at a deficit. For some of us, I don't want to put folks even more in a deficit. So that's what I'm trying to parcel out in my brain. If you have any suggestions, I would love to hear it. If you have any leads, I would love to hear it. It's interesting. Again, now I'm thinking about Leather Pride Night, how organizations all came together for one night, one time in a year, and raised money for charities. We just don't have that anymore. I really wish that I spoke to one or two people that belong to an organization, and they were like funny. And I was like, it takes nothing away from you to help out. It doesn't have to be your idea, but you can participate. Maybe we can have something like a Leather Pride Night. If folks know or remember what Leather Pride Night was, the organizations here in New York came together. It was a big to-do around Pride weekend. I don't know how the day went, or sometimes I think it was all in the same weekend. The brain, crackers whack, baby. But it was like Folsom, it was like Pride, Folsom, and then Leather Pride Night. And so we would have that exhaustion of June, and Leather Pride Night ended it, but then it was like parties and stuff after Leather Pride Night. But all of these New York organizations would come together, and stores and people, individuals would donate. It would be like a silent auction. Joe Arno would be the auctioneer. Love a butch and some leather. Folks would come out, like title holders would come out holding things. It was fantastic. It was so much fun. And they raised money. And that money went to charity. The Leather Pride Night Committee chose a charity or several charities, and then they split that money up, and then they sent it to the charity. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We can do this as a community, come together to help our siblings when it comes to their health. Whether that means I need to go see a therapist, and I want to see my therapist, but now I can't afford my therapist. Can I have some money for 4 sessions? I have a prescription for my hormone medicine. I just don't have the money to pay the copay, or if there's a copay, because shit is really expensive. So I'm putting that out there in the universe, sitting here in front of the sun and hoping that the leather goddesses hear me. Maybe we can come together and do something like that, whether it's individual giving or if we come together as a community, as organizations, to plan something to help our community in this time. Because why reinvent the wheel when we still have people alive that can give a suggestion on how they did it before? Anyway, that's all I got. If you have a suggestion, an idea, I would love to hear it. I can't do things in a vacuum. I just can't. I can't be thinking like I have all the answers. I am controlling, but I'm not that controlling. I know when to reach out and ask for help. I'm reaching out, asking for help, and hoping that you will all help me by putting some suggestions in the comments section, maybe, or sending me an email at blxalternative@gmail.com, and maybe we can try to figure something out. It takes resources, it takes manpower, and all of those things. Bit by bit, as the Yorubans say. You eat the rat's head bit by bit, because you don't want to, cut your mouth. Anyway. So if you have anything, suggestions, whatever, please leave it down below. Until next time, I'm going to go back to sitting in the sun and writing these grants. Take it easy.